On Sunday, I ran the Los Angeles Marathon. I did it! Here's the medal to prove it! It's been 4 days since the marathon, and today's the first day that I'm actually able to sit down without grunting in pain. I ran a marathon, I did it! I ran 26.2 miles. I ran it in 4 hours and 57 minutes. And I only stopped twice. I ran the whole time, but I only stopped twice. Both times to pee. Once in a porta potty, which was great, and once behind a bush. I've never physically done anything like that before. I've never run a 5K or a half marathon. I mean, I did in my training, but never in an official race. I grew up playing very competitive sports of basketball, softball, soccer, snowboarding, swimming, but I've never accomplished anything like that physically before. It was a wild experience, deeply profound, and something that I will be reflecting on truly for the rest of my life. Here are 3 things that running a marathon taught me about my faith. First thing that I learned, let me read to you from the book of Hebrews. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and every sin which clings to us so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. I was surrounded the whole time in my race. I was surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. I was never alone for a single second that day of the race. Even when I peed behind a bush, there was someone really close nearby doing the same thing. From the moment I arrived at Dodger Stadium at 5 a.m. and waited several hours before the race, and to the moment that I drove away from Santa Monica at the end of the race, I was surrounded by people. 13,000 people ran that race that day. I was just one among them. I was surrounded by other people, by runners, by professional athletes or semi-professional athletes, and people like me who had never done that before. I was surrounded by people I knew. My parents came into town to see me race.
Go, baby dog! Go, go, go!
And I had a couple friends out there cheering for me. But mostly it was people that I didn't know, that I'd never met. People running the race, but also people lining the sidelines for the entire 26.2 mile race. Random strangers with signs, with posters, cheering, handing out water, encouraging people, encouraging me. The streets were swarming with people. I was surrounded by people in person, but also from afar. I had so many family members and friends send me encouraging messages before, during, and after the race. I was surrounded, as scripture says, by so great a cloud of witnesses. And it was only because of that, it was only because I was surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses that I was actually able to do it, that I was able to persevere and run the race set before me. Yes, I had done my training, I'd stuck to my plan. Like I stumbled out onto the course and like miraculously ran the race. No, like I had done my training. This was the interesting thing. I had done long runs in preparation. I'd done a couple 18-mile, a couple 20-mile, a couple 22-mile runs all by myself. And I ran in gorgeous locations like the Cuyahoga River Valley in the fall, or I ran along the Pacific Coast Highway right by the ocean. And all of these shorter races that I ran, guys, they were so much harder than the marathon. They were so much harder than 26.2 miles. Why were they harder? Because I was alone. I was running by myself. But when the marathon happened, I was surrounded by literally thousands of people. This is the great thing about our faith. We are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. We are never alone in our walk with Christ. Catholicism is not just me and Jesus. No. Catholicism is me and Jesus and literally everyone else. We're surrounded by so many people we know, our family and friends in the faith, and also people we don't know, the members of the church globally. They surround us in person, but also angels and saints, those who have gone before us, those who are cheering us on in heaven. Catholicism, our universal faith, guarantees that we're never alone, which is a really good thing. God's first assessment of human nature in Genesis, God says, it's not good for man to be alone, and ain't that the truth? It's not good for us to be alone. There's no success. There's no thriving in spiritual isolation. Yes, there's going to be seasons in our life of loneliness. We might be going through a global pandemic. We might be at a new job or a new school, but ultimately, we're never meant to be alone. And the great thing is, when you're Catholic, you're not. You're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. And because of that, you're able to persevere and run the race that is set before you. And that's what I learned while running my marathon, surrounded by thousands of other people, surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Second thing I learned about my faith by running a marathon, I learned that I can do hard things. The marathon, It was super cool. It was also incredibly hard. It was really difficult. I remember at mile 18 when I realized that I had over 8 miles still left to go, and I thought I couldn't do it. I remember at mile 20 when my headphones died, and I realized I had 6 more miles, another hour more to go, and I thought there was no way I could do it. I remember at mile 22 when it started to go uphill, and that uphill didn't stop until the finish line. I was like, there's no way I can do this. But since I was surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, because there were people cheering me on, because my mom was chasing behind me ringing a cowbell, I knew I could do it. I could do the hard things that were in front of me. I knew I could do it, and I did. Here's the thing about our faith. It's super cool. It's life-giving, full of joy and freedom and peace, incredibly rewarding, so beautiful. But it's also incredibly hard. It's super difficult. Growing in virtue, stepping away from vice, overcoming laziness, saying no to sin and temptation, that is super hard to do. And there have been times in my life when I've thought that I just can't do it anymore. I can't live this faith. I can't discipline. I can't say no to sin. I can't break the habits of sin and addiction and pain in my life. I thought there was no way. But running this marathon reminded me that I can do hard things. One of my favorite signs from people in the crowd held up signs, and some of them were so funny. One of my favorite signs was someone on a big poster board. They drew a battery, and underneath the battery they wrote, "You have more in the tank." And I thought about that the whole race, and I realized towards the end, even though I was exhausted, even though it was hard, even though I thought it was impossible, I knew I had more strength within me, that I could do the hard things. Same thing is true in our faith. I have more in the tank spiritually. St. Paul writes, "You have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood." This is St. Paul's way of saying, you have more in the tank. You can keep going. You can overcome. You can do this. You can be a saint. Third thing I learned about my faith by running a marathon is an increase in gratitude. Every step of the race, literally the whole time, with every step, I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. This is incredible. This is amazing. My body is such a gift. I'm so thankful I'm able to do this without being injured, that I have the time and the ability to do this. 3 years ago, I couldn't run 3 miles, and now I was running a marathon. I was so deeply grateful for God, so deeply grateful for the gift of my body, which can do crazy things like run for 26.2 miles. I was so thankful that God protected me from injury, kept me safe, kept me healthy. I was so thankful that He helped me grow in discipline, in patience and sacrifice through all my times of training. I was so grateful that He allowed me to experience the gift of this marathon, that it wasn't canceled because of COVID, that I had the time and ability and resources to go do it. And it was a blast! Truly, for the first 18 miles, I was giggling, I was laughing, I was waving at the camera. The last 8 were pretty hard, but the rest of it was such a blast, and even when it was hard, I was so grateful for the opportunity to do it. Catholics, we believe in the Eucharist, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus. And the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith. It's the highest part of our faith. The word Eucharist comes from a Greek word that translated means thanksgiving. So in a way, you could say the source and summit of our Catholic faith is thanksgiving. I was so thankful to God that whole race. And in participating in that Thanksgiving, in a way, I was led deeper to the source and summit of our faith. There's so much more I could say, so much more to think about regarding the marathon. Those were 3 main things I learned about my faith by running a marathon.